Medicaid money is in its way a jobs program for New York, in that these are enormous deficits the city and the state face. A lot of it is healthcare driven. To give you some context, in the next 2 fiscal years, the 50 state budgets around the country are going to have aggregate deficits of over $330 billion. Of that, about 20 to 25% is just healthcare. So to the extent that the $25 billion that's going to be going nationally is going to help us offset some of the cuts that might have to happen in the budget. And also, look, you've got, by our estimate, just in law enforcement, we have an additional 200 officers that are going to be funded. So, in the context of job creation, we also have to look at the jobs that are being preserved. But I can't tell you with accuracy how many construction jobs. Yes, sir.
Congressman, politically, given the experience in the Senate, what's the odds that this budget will be passed? Won't it be fought over?
Well, much more so than in recent years. I do think this is going to be the blueprint for where we start. I think many Bush budgets were dead on arrival because at least in the last couple of years, for a couple of reasons. One, they proposed dramatic cuts that neither the House or the Senate were prepared to engage in things like Medicare. The Republican alternative budget that they floated this morning relies almost entirely for savings by slashing Medicare, something I think on a bipartisan basis, mostly the Democrats are not going to be willing to go for. But I do think that this is the beginning of the process, not the end. For one thing, there's still another dump of documents we have to get, support documents for the support documents to let us know exactly where we're going to proceed. But I think when you have a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, you've got to take the budget proposal of the president much more serious than we have in past years. Yes, sir.
Congressman, would you go over what you think this means for the schools, their funding, and the No Child as well?
Look, I think that it is a good thing whenever the President of the United States stands up and says he has a $28 billion increase in a budget, which is an increase of about $3 billion nationally. Now, overall, funds coming to the city of New York only account for about 6% of all of the funding that comes. It's by and large city and state tax levy dollars. So it's good news with the following cautionary note, is that the President has made it clear he wants to change the way the No Child Left Behind funding is allocated. If it becomes allocated based purely on tests and performance and less weighted to dealing with the pockets of poverty that we still have in New York City, then it could spell a dark cloud for New York City. But I'm prepared to hear out what the President proposes. I think that it is part of a continuing ideological conversation among educators about how you allocate funds. But I think it's something to be careful for. If they say we're going away from the formula and more to tests, I think that there are going to be some people who are going to be concerned about that.
But did you say originally that $4 to $6 billion or something like that it might mean for New York City?
No, it's not going to be 46.
$4 to $6.
$4 to $6 billion because of the large number of students that we have in New York City, and that includes additional money coming for Pell Grants as well. Well, I had anticipated that Dave would have this set up quicker, and also the wind doesn't hit me as hard as it hits you. I'm much thinner; it just kind of goes right by me.
In your opinion, what is wrong?
And I'm also wearing a scuba suit. Did I mention that?
What is wrong, in your opinion, about changing the formula if it's based solely on? Why not base it on academic success?
No Child Left Behind has largely been deemed to be a failure nationally because it did two things that seemed to be wrong. One, it drove an obsession with tests that changed the teaching experience, that more teachers were just trying to get the student to do well on the test, less concerned about a more holistic approach to education. The much bigger problem for cities like New York is the No Child Left Behind commitments to money were never followed through on, meaning that there were obligations put on New York City and no funding that came through it. The President is acknowledging that second point by putting more money in for education. Now we have to make sure that when they say we're going away from formula spending, we are the single largest beneficiary of the formula grants that are allocated by the federal government. So I'm not prepared to say yet that it's wrong, but it does raise a cautionary flag for many of us who've been following the education trends in Washington.
Anyway, are you running for mayor in 2013?
Running for re-election to Congress.
But you just mentioned a quit when you were mayor before.
but I did it off iPhone or whatever you're pointing at. Great, thank you very much.
I have
Yeah,
a question.
sure.
How would New York City get $4 to $6 billion out of a total funding package of 28 billion?
Because we are, without even close, we're not even close. We are the single largest public school beneficiary of public school funding in the whole country. And it's mostly because the overwhelming majority of it goes by Title I, which is based on how many students you have in each district that are below the poverty line. We are, even with our recent successes, still the single biggest, and it's much bigger, for example, than LA, which has broken up into different districts. But again, just it's a good place for me to make this question. A lot of what we've done here in the hour and about the 2 hours that have passed since the budget has come out officially, and about the 4 hours since the documents have been in our hands, is we've tried to take past formulas, looked at percentages that New York got, and tried to allocate them going forward. If they say that we're going to allocate this money based on something like the race to the top formula that requires certain benchmarks being hit, that could drop dramatically, could drop to zero. The same is true for the Homeland Security grants. The Homeland Security grants have traditionally gone disproportionately to New York City because we've been at the forward edge of initiating our applications. It could be that we have a giant increase in applications this year and our amount drops. You know, we tried to be conservative, and we're going to probably going to be putting an addendum to this later in the afternoon with new stuff that comes out. But this is our guesstimate.
Congressman, you touched on this, if you could though, what do you tell your Republican colleagues who look at this and say the deficit is astronomical here and it's going to really be bad for the economy?
Look, you know, Democrats and Republicans alike are concerned about the growing deficits. You know, we have to realize that sooner or later they're going to come back to bite us. But we're doing everything we can, in a simple way to put it, to monitorize the problem we face in the economy. We were losing about 700,000 jobs a month when President Obama took office. Now it's about 50,000 jobs a month. It's still bad, but we have stemmed some of that bleeding. If the federal government is not making smart investments now, and we retrench, I think that we will compound a deficit, a downward spiral in the economy. We have to do some smart things, but the president acknowledges that. I think that the president's idea to freeze non-defense discretionary and leave defense budgets unfrozen, I don't think that that's going to withstand a challenge in Congress. I don't think any of us in Congress believe that the defense budget has no waste in it. But I commend the president for raising the subject and taking it seriously. But we do need to realize our near-term challenge is to get this economy going and getting people working. Thank you very much.
Thanks.